Come on. Yeah, that's it. Oh, there we go.
Am I interrupting anything?
Nah, Lara Croft. Whew. Oh, scared me. Don't you knock?
You going to put that thing away and help me out here?
Well, what do you think I was doing this whole time? Oh, yes, I did it.
Was it good for you?
So, Miss Croft, what can I do for you?
Well, I was hoping you'd review Power Blade.
Did that.
Oh. Well, how about Power Blade 2?
Did that too. Don't you watch my show?
All right, sorry. You know gamer guys, bunch of bitchy little girls.
Okay, just spit it out already.
Well, you see, there's these zombies and they're after me and I just can't shake them and I need your help.
Seriously?
Just review the damn game already. I've got a hair appointment at 5 and a trip to the Himalayas booked for 8:30.
Roger that. Here's Tomb Raider Curse of the Sword. Following on the heels of the previous title, Tomb Raider Curse of the Sword was released on the Game Boy Color within a year of its predecessor. Curse of the Sword follows the same style gameplay as Core Design's first title, so a lot of what we covered last time is still applicable here. But are there any major differences worth noting? Plenty. Is it enough to change the experience overall? Well... Curse of the Sword opens to a similar title screen, and after starting up a new game, we open up to a... cutscene where a multicolored snake is circling around a mummy guy and a crocodile wearing a top hat? Well, similar to the previous game, the cutscenes in Curse of the Sword are still images that look like they were snapshots from a PlayStation-era Tomb Raider game cutscene. Sometimes they look pretty decent, and other times they look like someone smeared Vaseline all over the screen. Poor Lara. We see a sword with a name. Pavot? 1796 to, is that 7,844 or 1844? I really can't tell. Let's assume 1844. We then cut to a shot of Lara and her friend Jane hanging out at a New York museum, looking over what appears to be the sword from the hard-to-read picture. But trouble is on the rise, or fall in this case, as some armed goons come crashing through the glass ceiling. As the two ladies are knocked down, the mysterious man grabs the sword and Lara chases after him. Unfortunately, she doesn't have her guns because, well, this is a museum, so the first level is mostly a tutorial for newbies. If you dragged yourself through the previous game, you'll be right at home here. The controls are still a bit complicated, but I had an easier time maneuvering Lara through the levels. Unfortunately, Miss Croft is still stuck with the same controls that require patience and focus. I do feel like she has a bit more pep in her step overall, but I'll still sometimes find myself having trouble stopping when running. There's a much clearer indicator as to whether or not jumps need to be short or long. In the first game, platforms felt like they had the same amount of gap between each other, so it was harder to judge which jump is the correct one to use. Do I hold B and press up to do a little hop, or get a running start and make a leap of faith with up A and B? Curse of the Sword brings platforms to a more amicable distance to appease players' perspectives, so in terms of platforming, this one is less guesswork. There's a few subtle differences between the two games, and these are a variety of positives and negatives. One thing that that really helps is that pressing a switch or shooting a lever will lead to the camera showing the player what exactly was done when activated. This may ruin things for the true non-linear fans, but in my opinion, it makes the game more playable. And this addresses the complaints I had from the previous game. The puzzles are also a lot more complicated, but in a way that's engaging and not monotonous. In the previous game, you were just kind of collecting random items that, aside from the keys, you didn't really know what to do with. But in Curse of the Sword, the game is a lot more responsive to players by giving them questions through answers. I know that this train won't go without a lever thanks to the tip given, so it's clear that tracking down the lever is what needs to be done. It gives an objective that is reassuring of its accomplishment and feels less like a scavenger hunt and more like an adventure.
Alright, so the game's more user-friendly. So, what, A- then? Is that your grade? Can I go now?
Well, there's still something to talk about.
All the usual suspects returned from the previous game, though I will admit that Lara is easier to handle this time around.
Watch it.
Well, it's true.
Her overall movement is better despite the continued frustration of timing jumps just right to make the game flow better. Towards the end of the game, when you re-enter a more familiar jungle vibe the series is known for, there's a ton of spiked floors, and yet the game encourages players to walk, not run through the spikes to avoid damage. How this made sense to them, I don't know, as the first game taught us that spikes are bad in any capacity. Sometimes Lara can sprint for a split second to save some time, then slow back down to her usual slow as molasses walk, which doesn't seem worth it just to avoid these spiny traps from stealing too much life. But impaling is, well, it's still impaling. I will say there's less situations that the game puts you through in where you can die because you jumped into something blindly. There are some exceptions though. Here's what I don't understand. If I carefully drop down from this platform, I die. But if I just walk off the cliff, I live? How does that make any sense? They are the same distances. If anything, carefully falling is safer because I'm lower to the ground. I also can't stand shooting anything on a ladder. Because of the auto-aim, Lara's arm will rise and fall as the target gets closer or farther away. Despite hammering on the fire button, she refuses to fire if the object is in sight, which makes sense on a logical level, but it would help if the movement wasn't so precise. Most of the time, I just rapidly tapped the fire button until whatever I was shooting was dead. Since the AI is still rather brain dead, it wasn't challenging, just taxing of time. Regardless, the areas where Lara is just casually exploring levels echoes the previous Game Boy Color iteration. In fact, you can pretty much play these parts one-handed.
Did you know that your favorite food is hamburger-flavored cotton candy?
That's dreadfully revolting and brutally untrue.
Did you know that Lara Croft is Swedish for giant toe bag?
That doesn't even make sense!
Ooh, pin-ups.
Are you even still playing the game?
Yep.
Can you focus? Just once, please. 10 and 2 on the controller, thank you.
The game tries to break up the monotony from the first title by bringing in a bigger, bolder flavor from the later titles. The museum stage is more of an introduction on how to move, but in itself is a puzzle waiting to be solved. Guards stand watch, and with no weapons, Lara needs to figure out ways to get past them. It's a unique idea that makes this game stand out already from the previous title. The second level kicks things into high gear, tossing Lara onto the rooftops of the city as she has 5 minutes to chase down the bad guys, which ends in a battle with a helicopter. Level 3 drops Lara into the depths of the New York subway system for a mix of puzzle solving, and later a riveting journey hopping around a moving subway train. Level 4 brings Miss Croft through both land and sea as she enters into numerous buildings to gather items before heading to the docks, and taking a ride in an unarmed, tiny submarine. Duh, look how cute that thing is. It reminds me of a water vehicle from like Metal Slug or Earthworm Jim. Lara plants a tracking device on the bad guys so she can follow them to the Backland Islands, which returns Lara to a more familiar jungle and cave setting for the final 2 locations. I think the injection of variety styles really fleshes out the game's look and feel. This time around, the game is more engaging, allowing players to want to find out what happens next. I especially like the change-up in the 2 levels that force a time limit, as it's a nice wake-up and distraction from the intense fetch quests that bog down the rest of the journey. There's a lot more item hunting, such as finding the batteries, or searching through a storage area, or turning off the correct switch so you don't get electrocuted. And while the objectives aren't intensely difficult, they aren't as exciting as the more Twitch reaction style gameplay of the subway ride. Here, Lara has to figure out the best way to not get smacked in the face with obstacles. There's a specific rhythm to avoiding instant death, and despite getting frustrated while I was playing this part, I was having a blast. The rooftop run is also engaging, as there's various different layers to the level that allow you to drop down or climb above, and figuring out the best way to get to the end in a timely fashion is extremely rewarding. Unfortunately, when I returned back to the more non-linear stages, I yearned for more action, but respected the creator's decisions to not completely rev up the action engine full throttle. Combat is just as tedious here as it was in the previous game, although the power-ups aren't as generous. The health packs aren't stuffed into as many locations as you'd think, but I was still able to get through the game without worrying about running out. Instead of the heavy bullets, Lara has a shotgun this time around, and it is by far the best weapon for her in either of the two games. I tend to find that the rapid-fire guns use the same amount of bullets to take down enemies as the regular guns, and since there's still not much of a risk getting a game over screen during combat, I never really broke out the, all puns aside, big guns, unless I wanted to just blaze through a part I was bored with.
Was that a crack at me?
No, just big guns. You know. What?
You really are oblivious, aren't you?
What? You have big guns?
What we learn about the plot is that Lara accidentally cuts herself on the sword that she's chasing after, and because of this, she becomes the vessel for someone named Madame Pavot, a powerful spellcaster whose soul has been recaptured by an ex-apprentice of hers. This apprentice is planning to find Pavot a body, and accidentally during the fight for the sword, Lara is cut, marking her as the sacrifice. Because of this, you have these zombies that chase you down throughout the game, in addition to the shirtless armed gunmen who apparently all love late 90s, early 2000s fashion. There's not a ton of variety when it comes to the bad guys here, but just like the first title, there's an amazing level of attention to graphical detail. Between the garbage in the sewer, to the impressive flame effects in the jungles and caves, to the city rooftops and the smooth scaling of backgrounds during the chase scenes, it all complements the large and gorgeous sprite work seen here. This is a beautiful game to get lost in, and I tip my hat to the graphical prowess of the ladies and gentlemen of Core Design. And wait, what's this? Music playing during levels? Yes, during the chase levels and boss battles is Manfred Linsner's musical return to the Tomb Raider franchise, and while the rest of the levels still have no music playing through them, the levels that do contain the music throughout the entire experience, and it's a welcome addition. The hard rockin', head bobbin' tunes really helps keep the mind from wandering and keeps you focused on the task at hand. I just wish the rest of the game echoed the same sentiment. The boss battles are few and far between, but again break up the monotony of the searching for items to progress in the levels. And though this game's combat engine is not built for fast, rapid movement, it feels more like struggling to just trick the controls into doing what you want than feeling confident that there's a pattern to defeat your enemies. The best example of this is when you're on the docks facing off against the crane machine and its human operator. See, movement is much more limited when Lara's guns are out. This is true when trying to look around the immediate local area during platforming. You have to holster your guns before you can hold down the start button and use the directional pad to poorly fumble around the screen. Because Lara's motions are more accurate, she slows down when she does an instant turn in the opposite direction. And because of the auto aim, you're only able to get off one shot at the operator before having to rotate Lara in the opposite direction to get away from the crane. However, not all the fights follow this pattern. The helicopter fight points Lara's gun straight up at the target, allowing for a much more user-friendly boss battle. So, after Lara defeats Madame Pavot's apprentice, the game wraps up rather quickly. I felt like this was a much better game than the first title, though in all honesty, the more action-oriented levels were more fun to play than the non-linear item search portions. I think it's clear that the combat and controls are mostly still the same, and though Lara's movements are much smoother than the previous game, this title is further proof that variety is the spice of a good game. No wait, that's not how the quote goes.
Well, we did it, Lara Croft. We did it. Our journey has come to an end.
No, it hasn't.
What do you mean?
We've got one more adventure to tackle on the Game Boy Advance.
Like what you saw? Want more? Well, check out the first part of the Tomb Raider Handheld Trilogy on the left-hand side, and then come back in 2 weeks for the finale, Tomb Raider: The Prophecy. You can click that link on the right-hand side when it pops up. As always, thanks so much for watching.